Good afternoon. This is the JP Dinnell podcast, episode 13. I am JP Dinnell, and as always, I have my buddy Lucas with me. I get sucked into my phone way too much. I know it is a problem, and I've been trying to be mindful of this when I am around my family, especially during the times that we're sitting down and eating as a family. It is easy for me to justify it most of the time because it can easily be work or business stuff that I'm doing on my phone. While most of the time that can be factual, I also know that it is very rare that it is actually something that needs to be handled right at that exact moment in time. So I'm sitting next to my wife while our family is enjoying dinner with my in-laws and Amanda's aunt who's in town visiting us for Christmas. I know I need to be off my phone, so I put my phone into my left front pocket to stop the distraction of it. And as I look over to say something to Amanda, I hear one of our daughters scream from the bathroom, and then nothing else. No laughing, no other noises, nothing. Complete silence. Everything slows down. I get a spike of adrenaline, and I can feel my throat tighten up from the increased blood pressure. I back myself away from the table quickly, but also trying to be mindful not to cause a scene. I know our daughters went back to the bathroom together, as it is a rule we have for them to keep each other safe and not to be alone out in public. I also know that a man in his mid-40s, wearing dark pants, boots, and an older-looking black zip-up hoodie with a gray dirty shirt has also gone back there to use the bathroom. As I head quickly towards the hallway to the restroom, I'm scanning the restaurant for other men and women who might have been with this other guy. I scan the front door and nobody is hanging out there or outside. I do not see a vehicle that seems to be idling out front either. But I also realize that I also do not know the full layout of this building. And I start to wonder, where is the back door? What was it connected to? Was it the kitchen? Or was it this hallway by the bathroom? As I'm walking towards the bathroom, I sense somebody's behind me moving with the same purpose and urgency. As I go to turn, I quickly see on the reflection of the sushi bar glass that it was Aiden following me. Good. As I walk down the hallway, I cannot hear anything. It is complete silence. And as things start to slow down, I start to get a little tunnel vision. I take a breath. I approach the bathroom's doors. I check both of the doors to the men and the women's bathroom. Both of them are locked. I call out, "Cora, Nola, are you okay?" Silence. Nothing. No laughing. No movement in either of the bathrooms. I quickly decide that I'm going to kick in the women's restroom door first, and then I'll also kick in the men's restroom door as they are next to each other. I call out their names one more time. "Cora, Nola." "Yes, Dad?" I take a breath, relax a little bit, and look around me. Aiden is now 2 feet away from me, standing there ready for whatever was needed, whatever I needed. There's a man standing next to me. No longer a boy in my eyes. The men's restroom door opens, and that man walks out. We make eye contact, and he seems caught off guard that I'm standing right there. Nervously, he walks past Aiden and I. I wait until the girls walk out, and I ask her, "Cora, why did you scream?" And she tells me, "Nola turned off the lights, Daddy." I relax a little bit more, and I quickly explain to them why they cannot be playing like that in public. I walked back out with the girls and Aiden, and our family was ready to leave. They were all standing up by the table, and as we walked outside, I could tell I was still on high alert. I was on edge. Amanda could sense that as well, and she just put her hand on my shoulder, and we walked outside together. The drive home was a non-stop internal debrief. I need to be better. I need to be in better shape. I need to be more aware. I need to teach my kids more. I need to be more present. I need to train more. I'm failing. Good times. What's up, buddy? How are you?
I'm doing the same internal dialogue that you were doing on your way home.
Yeah.
You know, with a 15-month-old, and recently here in the DFW area, there's a guy named Bob, and Bob has a place called Ranch Hand Rescue, and what they do is they take people who have been like wounded or in traumatic situations, and they pair them up with animals who have experienced trauma in order to help with therapy. Bob was trafficked as a young boy. He's now in his 60s, and has opened up in the United States the first safe house for male survivors of sex trafficking.
Wow. Which
in the United States count for just under half of all the people who are sex trafficked. But there's only one home for boys in the United States. And so, like, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about, you know, some of the conversations that he and I have had, and with my 15-month-old, right? Like, this is the age that they start to look at them. And, you know, I'm thinking, like, okay, what are the rules that we're going to have?
Yeah.
When it comes to simple things like going to the bathroom.
Yeah.
With another kid on the way, like another boy, what's that going to be?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how I am after hearing that story now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was wound tight for a while, and I actually did not sleep well at all that night.
Sure.
I think part of it was from that.
Yeah.
I mean, some other reason, but I was thinking about, like, I was wound tight for a while, and I mean, I was able to like detach from my emotions.
Sure.
You know, I wasn't like, I was like all wound tight up all night, but it was like on my mind, you know. And when we got back to the house, we had a conversation with the kids. Like, we brought all the kids in, and we're like, hey, you know, and we explained to them like everything. And at first I was kind of like, well, you know, we'll just reiterate not playing around. And then I was like, no. They need to know why. They need to know why they can't be playing around. They need to know why we are vigilant about them not being alone, and how things quickly can turn, and, you know, and why we as a family act the way we act in regards to having awareness and being protective of each other, and just for them also having situational awareness, you know, is really important. And I mean, we went into the details with all three kids. You know, Aiden's 17, he gets it, he knows. I mean, dude, no, he was
on it sounds like.
Dude, he was ready to do whatever needed to, like, whatever's going to happen. I mean, there was no doubt, like, and but for the girls, they know that, and I explained to them, I said, hey, girls, I was like, you know, I used to tell your mom this, like, hey, don't ever put me in a bad situation to where I'm going to have to do violence on your behalf and end up in jail. Yep. And it's not that Amanda was ever causing problems, you know what I mean? But I was always like, I mean, this was like when we were first dating, and it was just more of like, just a reminder to her, like, hey, like, don't put me in a bad, like, if we're out drinking and some guy like hits on you, like, cool, whatever, you're smoking hot, like, it's gonna happen, you know what I mean? Like, don't be like, oh my God, like, and cause a scene. Like, one, I hate when chicks do that. Right. I shouldn't say chicks, that's offensive. When I say chicks, it's not offensive.
Is it
to
birds?
Me, it's not. Yeah,
birds
yeah.
Is better?
Well, chickadees. No, when I don't see chicks as being offensive. So, but whatever.
I think you're good.
But when women, like, that's always been one of my things. Is like when women, like, if a woman, it's like they get hit on, and you're like, oh, hold on, like, you're upset that some guy thinks you're attractive and is trying to hit on you, and you're going to cause a scene. And then it's like, well, I got a boyfriend. Okay, Do they know that? Do you have a necklace that says I have a boyfriend? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, it's always been the most ridiculous thing to me.
Right.
And Amanda was never like that. She
Yeah.
was just, I mean, she's gorgeous. She's always, you know, but I remember actually having conversations like, hey, please don't ever put me in a bad situation, because if you do or say something back and then it escalates, here's where I go. Like, it's gonna, you know, like, I don't, and now things are a lot different now. Like my buddies always joke, like the pre-Echelon Front JP, like those are two different JPs, you know? But even still now, I'm like, hey, I will never not protect my family, you know? And so I was explaining to the girls, I'm like, hey, so I just want to explain to you guys a situation. This is what we hear. This is what's going on. I was like, I'm walking back there and I am on edge, ready to be violent to protect you guys. I said, if that guy would have came out of the bathroom 30 seconds sooner, and if he would have been walking down that hallway, I would not have let him walk past me. And I told the girls, I'm like, I don't know what I would have done to him. There's one version, which is me going to jail because I blast him with an elbow as hard as I can. And I was trying to explain to him, I'm like, hey, I was like, I can generate a lot of power. And if I'm angry or mad or protective, like it's at a different level with an elbow, you know?
Right.
I was like, and I wouldn't just knock him out. Like, I would cause harm to him. And I was like, I don't want to harm anybody. I really don't. Unless you're an evil person, I don't want to harm anybody. I don't like that. I don't like causing harm to people. But I told them, I'm like, I'm not going to err on the side of like, well, let's see what's going on. I'm like, if that guy's walking out and because I heard a scream and now I don't hear anything else, I was like, that could have happened. I was like, now I would like to think that I would have just grabbed him and pulled him back there. As I said, you know, I'm checking on my daughters, and like, I could still get in trouble for that. I'm like, I could go to jail. Now, most likely I'm not going to go to jail, but the cops are getting called, you know, and there's a risk that I go to jail. And so we're trying to explain to him like, hey, here's the matrix of which I could fall upon because I think something's wrong with you. I think you've been hurt. I think something's happened to you. I don't know. So I'm not going to let some male leave that area, because if I walk past him and now he runs out, I've got to go get you guys to make sure you're safe. But then now that guy's gone and he's free and he could go do it again. So Amanda and I are really trying to explain it to the girls, and they took it on board, and it was good. And so it was a really good, you know, coaching, parenting opportunity to be able to like, hey, girls, like, this is what's going through my mind. You know, I was like, I mean, to the ends of the earth, I will do anything to protect you guys and keep you safe and keep you from harm. And if somebody causes you guys harm, it's not going to be good. And I don't ever want to be put in that situation. And so I was definitely, you know, and then it's like the UFC fights. So then like we have this conversation, they go to bed, and I'm watching the fights with Aiden, and I'm just like thinking the whole night about it. So it definitely led to some tossing and turning that night.
Yeah,
but,
no doubt.
I mean, man, but I mean, just, I think the other thing that for me was just the understanding of the world that we live in, which is really unfortunate. Like the world that we live in, like I went to that level right away, not because I'm some crazy former Navy SEAL combat vet. Like that actually has nothing to do with it. I mean, that's the way I've been raised my whole life. Like before I was even in the military, I was wired like this, but it was never really an issue before.
Yeah.
Now the world we live in, because there's so much evil, like this is a real thing that you have to think about. I mean, you just shared that stat. That's disgusting, and it's horrible, and it's horrific. And like there are evil people that are preying on our children right now, that are focused in and dialing in. I mean, you see it all the time. I mean, it's horrible. And I think as, you know, as I sat there that night and I was just thinking about it, you know, it's just like, am I fully prepared? I feel like I am. Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm prepared, but am I fully prepared? No. And at what point will I ever be fully prepared? I don't know. I just, you know, so for me, it was just like a lot of self-reflection of like, hey man, like, dude, if there's 3 guys back there, are you in good enough shape to fight 3 guys? are you skilled enough to fight 3 guys? Like, what weapon system did I have on me at that time? You know, like, okay, am I carrying a gun? Am I carrying a knife? Am I carrying, a ballpoint pen in my pocket? Like, you know what I mean? You're
Right.
assessing and scanning and thinking about all these different things. And it's just like, I don't know. It's just been this constant assessment of just like my capabilities, because, desire and capabilities are 2 different things.
For sure.
And, and then also, as I was thinking about it, it's just like, I'm so thankful for God's timing that guy did not walk out sooner, because I mean, again, I don't want to harm anybody, like, ever, unless you're evil, unless you cause harm to other people, then I'll be fine. And I think everybody else in society is fine with that.
Right.
But I would rather not, because what I'd rather do is like, been like walking down the hallway and the guy comes out. I'm like, hey man, how are you? Like, that's what I wish I would have been. Like, that's the mode I wish I would have been. Like, hey man, how are you? And he's like, good man. I'm like, cool man. Anything you need prayers for? Because that's what I've been trying to be intentional about. You know what I mean? Like, I've literally been very intentional about that lately. Because I know we talked about that on the Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu podcast a while ago, and I've been very intentional about doing that lately. And it's cool. Like, the other day, my Uber driver, when I was in San Diego coming back home, we were just talking, and, the guy was like, yeah, I'm originally from Iraq. And he's talking about his family and how he just had a baby and his second kid. And we're just having this really good conversation. And he's like, dude, the guy was like all fired up for what's going on in the country right now. He's like, people do not understand. He's like, we cannot let this country go the way that it's going. He goes, I left Iraq for a reason. He goes, and it ain't for this. You know what I mean? And I'm like, all right, bro. And like, but, and we get out of the Uber, and I'm just like, hey man, like, is there anything you need prayers for? And he's like, yeah, actually, and then, I mean, we're standing there in front of the airport, and he's just like laying it all out. And I'm like, all right, cool, let's do it. And now we like just prayed together right then and there.
That's awesome, man.
Like, I would rather be doing that. Like, that's how
It's
I want to be operating.
Way more enjoyable.
Yes, way more enjoyable. Like,
than having to be stressed.
Dude, visualizing doing horrible things.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to, but it's unfortunately the world that we live in, because evil exists and it's growing.
Yeah. And it's you talk about that you were like this way, like before the SEALs, right? Because I think that people have this impression of people who have served, especially those who have seen combat, right? That like something happened, that a switch got flipped and he came back and he was never the same.
I mean, it's really good for a Netflix series.
Yeah, for sure, right? Like, this summer, JP Dinnell is the man who came home. Like, whatever that looks like, we have this idea that happened, but there's a reason that people sign up for military service.
Yeah.
There's a reason that you have so many, particularly like this groundswell of men in the last, I would say probably like 10 years, that are working towards this like reclamation of manhood. And it's not because you're looking to become violent, but it's because there is this instilled, some people would call it primal. I'm going to go a different route and say God-given, right? Yeah. Desire and like need to protect and take care of your family.
Yeah.
Well, when you talk about, your desire to do something really doesn't mean anything, because, or if desire is all you have, right?
Yeah, desire and capabilities. Like, you have to be capable to do the things you want to do.
So this is one of the things that we've talked about before, and I don't know if we've ever brought it on the air, right? That like, if you are like, if you're a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, and you decide that you don't want to get into fights, right? Then you're a pacifist, right?
Okay.
If you are a person who is non-violent, but you have no skill set, then you're actually harmless. Because you can't actually defend your family. You can't defend yourself if something comes up. So you can't say that you're a pacifist, because you actually don't have any capability to do anything other than flee or to just huddle up and take whatever beating or abuse or whatever is coming your way.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have the training,
for later thoughts,
if you know how to do, I mean, and we've talked about this before, like 6 months of jiu-jitsu is 6 months of good training in jiu-jitsu, 2
Yeah.
2 to 3 times
Solid
a week.
training, yeah.
Yeah, you're going to be more capable than the majority of people that you end up meeting in the streets if you were to find yourself in a brawl.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
But that's the difference between desire and capability is saying like, hey, I'm a pacifist. And like, oh yeah, well, what can you do? Well, all of my shots end up at the 10 ring, right? I'm great with a bow. I'm great with a rifle, pretty good with a handgun. And, I've done jiu-jitsu for a little while. Like, oh, so you like actually don't want to hurt anybody. No. But if you're like, hey, I'm a pacifist, and you're like, oh, cool. So what do you know how to do? I play video games sometimes. Like, oh, you're actually harmless.
Yeah.
And there's a significant difference between being a pacifist and being harmless.
Yep.
And a good friend of mine, Doug Tenaple, who he was like a writer for VeggieTales, and he also he created Earthworm Jim from like the Sega Genesis game. He's a brilliant artist, but one of the things that Doug says is he was like, I think that there are a lot of great pacifists, but I think that, he goes, particularly in our country, I think we also have a lot of cowardly Christians that call themselves pacifists.
We have a lot of those.
And I was just like, that statement like broke me. I did a whole sermon series on it after he and I had that conversation. Yeah, I think that there are a lot of great pacifists, but I think more often than not, we have a lot of cowardly men and cowardly Christians. It's like, yeah, because we're harmless.
Yeah. Dang, man. I mean, that's definitely a thought that I think we should all be dwelling on.
Yeah.
And focusing on and thinking about. And, last night when we were recording the Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu episode, I kind of got a little fired up when I was talking about like just people being complacent with like their faith and inviting people, you know what I mean? Like, dude, why, I know I went hard. I might have offended somebody, but I kind of don't care if I offend somebody on this one. It's like, hey man, like if you're not inviting people to church, what are you doing?
Yeah.
If you're not talking to people about God and salvation and why it's important to have that, what are you doing? You're a coward. You're literally a coward, like, because you're you're afraid of somebody's opinion for you being a Christian, dude. You are worse. Like, you're worse. Like, that is causing so much harm to Christianity, because it's like, why would somebody want to be a Christian if they look at you and see how weak you are? If you're not bold with your faith, why would I want to have that same faith? People aren't drawn to weak people. They're drawn to strong, bold people that have convictions, that have passion, that have energy, that do the right thing for the right reasons. Like, that's the type of Christian men and women that we need in our nation right now. Those are the type of leaders that we need in this nation right now. Like, that's what the issue is. It's not Republican and Democrat. It's weak leadership. That's the problem. Like, that's the issue that we have in our nation right now. We have weak leadership in the school districts. We have weak leadership in the capitals that allow a satanic freaking statue to be put up in Iowa. Are you kidding me? And it took some dude to fly from Mississippi to go tear it down. Like, come on, man. Like, what is going on right now? Like, we need to do better as a nation. We're like, we have to do better, because if we don't, like, man, there's going to be some problems ahead of us very soon.
Yeah.
And it's going to be the whole, like, where did this come from? What do you mean? We've allowed it the last 7 years. We've slowly allowed this to creep in. Mm-hmm. You imagine 20 years ago, them being able to host transgender readings at elementary schools?
Oh, not a chance.
Exactly. It was a slow indoctrination.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, it's people getting complacent, man. And, that's
absolutely, like, we're comfortable, right? And that is, one of the things that I've recently started reading. I say recently, within the past few years, and this was inspired. You ever listen to Hardcore History with Dan Carlin? He did like 27 hours on World War I called Blueprint for Armageddon. That was really, really great.
I'm going to have to look it up. I feel like I have, but I don't want to say
his
yes.
stuff is incredible. He releases like 1 4-hour podcast like every 6 months.
Oh, wow.
And they're unbelievable deep dives into historical events. His blueprint for Armageddon, I think it's 6 parts, took just over 3 years for him to do, and I bet I've listened to it 3 times. It's unreal the depth that he goes into with it. But one of the books he suggests when he was doing a series called King of Kings over the kings of Persia and the Babylonian Empire and all this stuff is, and this was several years ago, he was like, I was reading Maurice's Strategicon, and like as a pastor, knowing about Rome is a really important thing because that's primarily where the setting for the New Testament is, right? And so I'd never heard of Maurice's Strategicon, so I go and I check it out, and it is the field guide for the Roman generals during the life of Maurice. And so he's talking about like, hey, how do you defeat the Vikings? And the thing with the Vikings or the wild men of the north or whatever they call them is that you cut off their beer supply. You circle them up, you don't let them get into a berserker rage, and you make sure that they can't get their mead, and after a couple of days, they'll lose heart. You won't lose any men, you'll never actually have to fight a battle, and they'll leave. And so like this is the guide that he's like passing out to everybody. So that's how you fight like the Vikings and the Saxons. Well, when you go and you start to fight the men of the East, and this is the thing that stuck out to me the most, and it's always kind of got me kind of on this trail of like where our country is versus like the fall of the Roman Empire, that they had no fortitude. They were men who wore pants with embroidery on the pockets, and that they wore eye makeup like women. And he points that out, and he's like, and when you go to fight them, they'll be easily conquered because they have no fortitude. Yeah. And I'm looking at, okay, so these are the things that were written by this brilliant Roman field general. This is basically, the field manual for all of the Roman armies. This is what they were passed around so that they were like, hey, what's the person that we're fighting? All right, let's go to section 3.1 and check it out. And then whenever he writes this and starts distributing it, it's not long after that Rome begins to fall because of the very things that he has outlined that make the men of certain areas weak. And that's what began to happen in Rome. And if we were to look at that in that kind of timeline that it's set out, that those are the exact same things that are happening here. As that, it's not that masculinity necessarily is being made taboo, but all of the things that men are supposed to do are. And it reminds me of this verse, 1 Timothy 5:8. It says, But if anyone does not provide for his own family, especially for his own household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. And when we're thinking about, this situation with your daughters, right? The reason that you're able to have the conversation afterwards is because they love and respect their dad. Well, if you haven't provided for them, if you haven't set that example, if they don't know that your intent is not to harm, but to keep them safe first and foremost, you can't have that conversation. That's true. And a lot of the things that we're seeing on a national level, like we can't have those conversations with our kids because we haven't invested enough in them to where they trust us, because we haven't built trust. We haven't listened. We haven't shown respect. And so therefore we don't have any influence. And we look at like the 4 things that make up every relationship, right? Trust, listen, respect, influence. We haven't done those 3. And so we have no influence over the lives of our kids. But these other people, because they go to school for 8 hours a day where they're not with mom and dad, but there is weak leadership. Well, those people show them respect. They listen to every little thing that they have to say and validate every little thing that they have to say. So it's no wonder that they have the most influence.
Yeah, that's interesting. Good times.
Yeah, for sure. You've said that like 3 times now, and none of them have been what I would classify as good times. But all of this stuff is, I think it's important things for us to talk about, because like the vigilance that you had with your daughter. Like, so but I want to kind of break down this situation a little bit and kind of probe into your parenting. Yeah. Right. So when you have these talks with your daughters, first off, when you set this rule, right, you tell the twins, like, you have to go to the bathroom together or with somebody, right? So like, how does that work when it's just you and one of the girls? Because when it's just the two of y'all out and one of them has to, like, I'm sure those scenarios
Yeah,
happen.
that happens sometimes. Depends on the, honestly, depends on the location.
Sure.
And
Like if you're at the same scenario, you're at a restaurant.
yeah, I mean, that'll even depend on the restaurant that we're at, depending
Okay,
on
yeah.
like, okay, how long have we been there? I usually have a good sense for what's going on around us, and I just kind of like constantly scanning and whatnot. So, if let's just say it's just Cora is with me, she's like, hey, Dad, I gotta go to the bathroom. Like if I even get an inkling that I don't want her going to the bathroom alone, I'll walk back there with her.
Yeah.
Like even just a little nudge from the Holy Spirit, I'm like, nope, I'll walk back there. And I've literally had it to where I'm like, hey, open up, I'll look in there and make sure like it's just her.
Yep.
Or like, I don't care. Like if it opens up and there's like a female standing there, like, okay, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
my daughter's going in.
yeah, and it also it's like not like a female just standing in the middle of the bathroom unclothed, like you know what I mean. So I'm not like peeping in there, but I'm gonna look and kind of see. Okay, cool. There's women in here, and okay, cool. And then I'll just stand outside the door, and like even with women, right? I'll just stand outside the door, because women also kidnap kids,
Yeah.
and
for sure.
they do it as much as men do, and they'll work in pairs and all that stuff. It's evil stuff, man. But most of the time, Amanda and I, we will go back there with them and just stand there with them. The rare occasion that we don't, it'll be at a place that I just know isn't very busy, and I haven't seen a lot of people going to and from the bathroom, and I know the probability of her going back there and being alone is very high. And I'm also sitting in a proximity where I can see who's going to and from, and I can hear. Like I would be able to hear a scream or something, and then I'll just be watching everybody that goes back there, and watching body language. And I mean, body language can tell you a lot about somebody and what their intent is. Then I just monitor who's going back there, the body language, the intensity that they have. Are they nervous? You know what I mean? Are they looking around? Like I will be scanning all of that, and and then again, if I get any slight nudge from the Holy Spirit, I'll get up and just go back there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we're at.
So when we're talking about, desires versus capabilities, right? That there are, I think, certainly there are people who listen to this podcast, but there are a lot of men and women who are out there that like want to protect their families, protect their kids, right? But they don't have the capability to do that. Right. So how do you make that self-assessment? We've talked a lot about self-assessment over the course of this podcast because if you're going to make improvements, you have to have honest self-assessments, right?
Yeah.
So how do you make the self-assessment of am I capable? And then part B being, then how do I become capable?
Well, there's a few different ways on the honest self-assessment. I mean, go to a gym, go to a boxing gym, go to a kickboxing gym, go to a jiu-jitsu place and do a trial, right?
Yeah.
And see, like,
a lot of them will give you free classes.
Yeah, free trial. And I mean, honestly, I would think most gyms, if you were to go there and say, hey, I'm just not sure my capabilities of being able to defend myself and my family. I wanted to test to see what my capabilities are. Is that something I could try out? Now you gotta frame it the right way. Like you're not going in there like, hey, I want to fight somebody. You're not doing a dojo storm.
Oh gosh,
I know.
I've seen it happen.
Yeah, we've seen it a lot. But I think if you posture it the right way, most gyms are going to be like, all right, yeah, we can put you in a scenario, And I did this for these. I was teaching shooting to a group of executives a long time ago, and they were very arrogant with their ability to defend themselves. And it's because they make, which is funny. It's because they equivalated the fact that they made really good money, that they were, they were going to be good to go. And I'm like,
oh, for sure.
And I'm just like, okay. So I did a little mock scenario with them. And I said, all right, we're going to do two different things. One, you're going to start off on the ground, and you're going to be sitting down, and I'm going to come sit behind you, and I'm going to grab you. And you've got to fight to get your gun out of your holster. And so I took their weapon. It was clear and safe. And I said, you've got to get your gun out. And out of your holster, which is going to be the easiest draw that you've ever had to do in your life, because it's an outside the waistband holster. Like, it ain't concealed. You know what I mean? Like, there should be no problem.
You're not digging in your shirt.
Yeah, and I told him, I'm like, I'm not going to start holding your gun. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to be holding on to you. And what I didn't tell him is that I was going to be lightly striking them. No, I wasn't like, I didn't hit. When I say light, I mean, I'm talking like it was nothing. And I was like, all right, ready, go. And they start fighting, and I just bopped them in the nose, bro, right away.
Just a little boop.
Just a little boop, boop, right? A little boop in the nose. And it instantly, like, eyes are teared up. And then I would start fighting their hands, and I would just like little karate chops to the throat, and like hit their ears and clap their ears together, and like take their head and like hook my fingers on just the brow and just pull their head back. And it was just I wasn't fighting them, man.
Right.
I was literally manipulating them by just like doing little things. Dude, these guys couldn't get their guns out. It was like fall, and then it would get to the point where they're like panicking, and then I'd end up like on top of them, mounted, and I'd just be like slapping them, and I was squeezing my legs around their gun. They couldn't even get to their gun. And you know what's crazy is not one of their instincts was to hit me back.
Really?
Not one person's instinct was to hit me back, bro.
Wild.
It's crazy. Now, we talked about it. We debriefed it afterwards. And then we worked through a couple different things. And then, you know what? Guys right away trying to punch me in the face, trying to grab my throat.
Yep.
I'm like, why did not one of you try to just grab my throat and squeeze it?
Yeah, like push me away. At least push me away, like get some distance so that you can pull your firearm out. None of that.
They didn't know what to do. They'd never been trained. They never grew up wrestling with their brother. They didn't have a dad like I had who set up a hose in the front yard with boxing gloves and made me box like my friends and the paper boy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm thankful my dad had me. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't have a dad that would box them. Like, and when I say this, my dad wasn't beating us up, but my dad would let us punch him and would learn how to punch and move. You know what I mean? They didn't have a dad that wrestled with them. I had those things. Yeah. I had a brother that Corey and I would play fight all the time, and cousins, and like, these guys didn't have that. So how are they supposed to know how to do those things?
Yeah.
It's the whole stupid, like, about when it happens, I'll just know what to do. No, you will not.
Nope.
No, you will not. You're not going to see red. You're not going to be able, you know what I mean? Like, guess what? When seeing red means that you don't see anything, which means that you have zero situational awareness, meaning you're not going to know what's happening. Therefore, you're not going to know what to do. And so
your judgment is worse whenever you get angry or like the adrenaline gets going than it is beforehand. And I like this goes back to some of the stuff we were talking about with Cody on I think episode 2 or episode 3 is that you can only rise to you don't fall to the level of your training, because that means you could exceed it.
Yeah.
You can only rise to the level of your training. And so if your training is like at a level 2, then that's it. That's all you've got.
That's all
you're not going to like magically like I know you probably don't watch anime, but like there's Dragon Ball Z is this really popular thing. When the guys get super angry, then they explode into the next level of strength and skill, and now all of a sudden, you've made me mad, and so now I've learned all of these new abilities like magically.
Oh wow.
That doesn't happen. That's not
that's
real
not
life.
Yeah, I mean, and like we said, there's the rarity like Dakota Meyer, where he rose past what normal training would be. But I still believe that was in him from birth. That is a gift that God gave him. No
doubt.
Those capabilities were God-given capabilities.
Yes.
When you read stories of living Medal of Honor recipients, even all Medal of Honor recipients, like Mikey Mansour's, zero hesitation. Grenade gets thrown on the rooftop, hits him in the chest, bounces in front of him. What are most humans doing? They're jumping away to avoid the blast. Mikey, without hesitation, jumped on top of the grenade because of his 2 teammates that were laying right next to him. Talk about that decision-making process.
Yeah.
That's a God-given instinct. And so we have to understand that is such a rarity of being able to do those types of things. But God gives us the ability to train.
Yeah.
And to elevate ourselves. So and
I think in that same breath, you have to say, like, if those guys aren't trained the way they are, They're not in those situations
Then
to even make make those kind of decisions.
And because
right?
of their training, they were capable. You know what I mean? Like they
all go hand in hand.
They rose to their God-given capabilities because of their training.
Yeah.
And so that's something that's why we have to be mindful and intentional. So to go back to finishing up the answer to my question is, if you were to go to a gym and I'm asking for that, I mean, that's a great place to start. Or, like, I'm willing to bet all of our listeners at least have a friend in their life that they could ask for help. And just put yourself in a situation where, like, maybe your friend has boxing gloves or MMA gloves, or, you just decided, like, hey, no punching, but open hand strikes. Like, hey, I'm trying to, like, I need to learn how to defend myself. I want to know what I'm capable of. Put yourself in a mock scenario where you're having to work through something. And then, I mean, the other thing that everybody can do is just be more aware. I mean, there are, like, FBI statistics and studies. I don't know the numbers. Go look it up. But where they interviewed people in prison that had caused harm and done horrible things to people about, like, who was more of a easy target for them. And it didn't matter whether it was a man or a woman or the race or the age. The harder target for them that they would actually avoid was the people that made eye contact. So they were more likely to attack a male that was, like, heads down, not paying attention, than an older lady who made eye contact and who was looking around. Because that person with their head down, that's a soft target. That's an easy target. And the people that are going out and doing these things, they're cowards, so they're going to come up there and they're going to hit you when you're not looking. And they're, that's why you got to have your head on a swivel, looking around. Like, even when I was moving toward, I'm focusing on my daughters, yet I'm still not so focused on that I don't notice that somebody's, like, moving with me in the restaurant.
Yeah.
And because I could hear it, I could feel it, I could sense it. And then when I looked at the reflection of the glass on the sushi bar, I saw that it was Aiden. I was like, all right, cool, it's Aiden, But you got to have that situational awareness. You got to be thinking about these things. So one thing that everybody can increase is just basic situational awareness, looking around, making eye contact with people. When I'm sitting on a plane, I will, even if I'm working, because I get on the plane right away, I pull out my computer, I start working or I start reading, I still make a conscious effort of making eye contact with almost everybody, if not sometimes everybody that comes on a plane, of just making that eye contact, making it known, like, hey, I'm on this plane. I know you're on this plane.
I see you.
Yeah, I see you. And I know that will eliminate the likelihood of a threat happening by them being seen by somebody with intent. Not in an intimidating way. I'm not glaring at them, but I just look and I make eye contact and I nod.
Yeah.
Or I'll smile. And it's just like, hey, I see you. And it's just having that awareness and that situational awareness, I think, is really important. And that's something that, again, I know I said it like 3 times, everybody can work on.
Yeah. You preface this whole thing, if I'm going back here in our deal to page 1, with I spend a lot of time on my phone.
I do.
And then you talk about how you made the decision to put the phone in the front pocket, right? So the first hypothetical, right? You stay on the phone. Do you think you hear do you think you're in this situation? Do you think you hear the scream? Do you think you're paying attention to that stuff? Or do you think the phone may have been enough to distract you?
So I can't give an honest answer because I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
I
would like to assume I would because it's my daughter's voice that I hear.
Sure.
And I think that comes out on top of everything. Mm-hmm. However, what am I watching? Am I listening to something? What if I was like, oh, let me put my headphones in to listen to this video?
Right.
I wouldn't have heard it then.
Yeah. And you're more likely to miss something, like if you're responding to a message than if you're reading a message. And,
yep, 100%.
And all those kinds of things. So,
and if Amanda would have been like, hey, I think the girls just screamed, I would have been like, okay. So then I would have had to ask her questions. I would have had to get information, blah, blah, blah. But
you certainly missed the fact that there's a guy that just walked back there.
Yeah, well, that had happened so they'd been back there for a few minutes. The guy walks back there a few minutes later, and then so there was like this span. I'm still trying to figure out the exact timeline in my brain.
Right.
But the girls had been back there, and then the guy walks back there a few minutes later.
Okay.
And then about a minute-ish later, that's when the scream happened.
Okay.
So I was on my phone, but I wasn't on it the whole time. I noticed that he had gone back there.
But I'm just saying, like, if you are on your phone, maybe you missed the fact that dude's back
I'm
there,
sorry.
right?
I did not
Yeah.
interpret that properly. Yes.
Yeah.
I probably would have missed that.
And those are like those little details are so important. Like, how many stories have we read or people have we talked to that they're like, you know what, if I would have just paid attention to this one little thing, that would have made all the difference in the world. And why didn't you pay attention to it? Oh, I was sucked into my phone.
Yeah. I've explained to Aiden when driving, and Amanda and I talk about it all the time, is just like constantly scanning like your mirrors, is just have awareness of what's around you. Because if the car stops in front of me and I know I have a car on my right hand side, I can't swerve to the right.
Yeah.
But if there's no one to the left, I can swerve to the left. And so just understanding like this, having this awareness of your surroundings is very important at all times.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. So, you made that decision to put the cell phone in your pocket, but it also sounds like that's something that you've been like working on, is being more intentional about that. So I struggle with it. My Kirsten and I were sitting in the living room a couple of weeks ago, and Levi he's just started walking. He's like past like a week and a half, right? So he looks like Frankenstein's monster.
Yes.
And he's making all those same noises. He's like, as he's
That's
walking
amazing.
into stuff and like going after the Christmas tree and all this stuff.
Of course.
It's awesome. But the intentionality has had to change just in the last few days, because he's not having to pull up on stuff. Now he's standing up on his own, like right in the middle of the floor. So total game changer. Prior to that, right? Like, he's over in the corner, he's entertaining himself.
Yeah.
Right. If I get a text message, like, I can check that text message. Kirsten and I, we could both check a text message at the same time. Kids in the corner, like, everything's fine. Now I go to look at my phone, he's up and he's moving around. Right. I know my tendency is going to be to get complacent with this, especially the more self-sufficient he becomes, in 4 or 5 years, whenever he's able to do stuff on his own, where I can, leave the room and he's going to be fine. Right.
Yeah.
How do I fight the complacency to stay off my phone whenever, there is business stuff I have to take care of. Like, people are texting me with prayer requests, or somebody, is going into the hospital and I need to go take care of that. How do I keep my priority with the people that are in front of me, the people that God has given me to love and protect as the folks in my household, without getting sucked in and pulled away, not even for the nonsense of like social media, but for what we would consider the important stuff, the work stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a very hard one, and you're going to have to be disciplined. And this is one of the things that I struggle with. I want to be very clear. I don't have this figured out. This is one of the things I have struggled with, and I'm being more intentional on. It's okay. I have windows, right? Windows that, okay, I can be on my phone right now. Like, all right, the girls are working on their homework and like nobody's talking to me. Nobody needs my attention at that moment. Guess what I can do? I can be on my phone. There's times where I literally will go into my office to sit on my phone because I'm working from my phone, but I wanted to be very clear that I'm working. So I go into my office and I'll be in there. And then when I'm done, I'll come back out and then I can be more present. I can do whatever I need to do. So it's being intentional with the time that you're on and the time that you're off.
Yeah.
And then also communicating that to your spouse. Like, hey, honey, I need to get on my phone and work for the next 20, 30 minutes. Do you mind, taking over the little warrior kid?
Yeah.
And so then your wife knows, oh, okay, cool, I've got the watch right now. And then you being able to do the same thing for your wife. And be like, hey, honey, like, I'm going to, take our son outside and we're going to go, for the next 30 minutes. I'm going to take a break from my phone, from work, like whatever you need to get done. And so just going back and forth between that stuff. And there are going to be times where like, okay, you're outside and all of a sudden you get a phone call or you get a text message. You can read that text message real quick. You can look at it and also still be paying attention to your son. And then you could do a little like talk to text, like, hey, outside with my son, I'll get back to you in the next 30 minutes. Or, hey, I'm busy right now, I'll get back to you in the next 30 minutes. The other thing, like sometimes like I'll read a message on and what's nice about the iPhone is that if you read a message and you go back out to your messages where they're all listed, if you swipe from the left side of the screen over, you can mark that as unread.
Yep.
So for me, I'll do that sometimes. Be like, okay, I read it, but I need to come back to it. What's the reminder? I'll swipe, mark unread, and then boom, it allows me to get back to it later.
Yeah.
So just, I think you have to be really intentional about when's the right time and when's not the right time. And then also just communicating that to the people around you.
That, to me, that sounds a little bit like a cover and move in the house.
Yes. Oh, big time.
Right?
Yes, absolutely.
So you put the cell phone away, you end up at the end of the situation. Now let's talk about the ride home, you got your internal dialogue going.
Mm-hmm.
How do you approach the conversation with the kids so it doesn't feel like mom and dad are mad first and foremost?
So I told them when we were in the store, in the restaurant, I said, hey, you cannot be playing around like this. Like, I thought something was wrong. You can't do that. And they both were like, I'm really sorry. Boom. Now, what I wanted to do and what I did are two different things. I wanted to go into it like, hey, here's why, blah, 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 right? And just start listing off everything. Wasn't the right time, wasn't the right place. And I knew I was still amped up. So if I had that conversation at that moment where I'm not detached from my emotions, is there a probability that I could have said something that I maybe didn't need to say? The answer is yes.
Oh, for sure.
So
yeah,
I had to detach and realize that the conversation did not need to be had at that moment. So I waited until we got home, when I was able to process everything, when I was able to relax. There was no need for a specific conversation right at that moment. So I didn't have it. Relaxed, detached. Actually talked to Amanda and said, hey, I want to talk with the girls and Aiden about what happened tonight. She goes, absolutely. And we were sitting on the couch and Aiden was sitting right there. And I called for the girls and Cora comes in there and I was like, hey, can you go get your sister? I need to talk to you. She's like, about what? And I'm like, and I felt myself starting to get mad at her.
Uh-huh.
And I recognized, oh, I'm still wound a little tight.
Mm-hmm.
I said, honey, I need to talk with you and your sister. And she's like, about what? And I'm like, hey, you need to stop pushing back on your mom and I. If your mom and I say we need to talk, guess what? We're going to talk to you guys. Go get your sister. And she goes, well, she's in the shower. And I'm like, why didn't you just say that?
Lead with that.
Yeah. And so that's why I'm just like, so obviously I'm a little frustrated. My wife can tell that I'm frustrated. And my wife is getting a little irritated as well with Cora, pushing back and questioning and challenging. And then I recognized, okay, hey, well, she has legitimate questions. I need to do a better job at communicating to her about why we need to talk. And so anyways, Nola ends up coming out and that's when we had the conversation. But there's enough time that allowed me to detach from my emotions. I wasn't wound tight. I wasn't upset. I wasn't mad. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like when you discipline your kid. If you're going to give your kid spankings, then you should never give them spankings out of anger.
Yeah, not when you're at the height of your aggressiveness and upset of the situation.
That's not when you give your kids spankings. No. So that for me was, I recognized, okay, well, I need to be in a good position where I'm not angry, I'm not mad, and they don't take it as me being angry or mad at them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, you have the conversation with them. What's the... when you finish that conversation, are you giving them action items, or is it more just hey, this is what happened, this is why that's a big deal? Because I think that there is a portion of our audience that will hear this and they'll be like, well, that's one thing because JP's a SEAL, and because he's a team guy, that his daughters understand what he's potentially capable of, and I'm not going to have that same kind of conversation with my kids because we don't have the same background. And
that's your fault.
Yeah. Okay. First, agreed. But then the second is all right, so, I've had that talk with my kids, but they don't see me in that light.
Yeah.
How do I communicate to them, as we wrap up the conversation? Here's what I need you to do, why I need you to do it.
So I want to be clear on what I said in regards to that's your fault.
Yeah.
That wasn't an attack. That's a factual statement.
No doubt.
That is a factual statement.
If your kids know that you can't cause anybody harm, when you say things like that, they're not going to take you seriously.
That's 100% something that you can take control over. Yeah. And that's a choice that you've made your whole life, which, okay, let's change it.
Yeah.
Let's change that conversation that you can be had. And so if you're listening to this and going, well, I'm not a Navy SEAL. Okay, cool. That was your life choice. And I'm not saying that in a negative manner. I'm just saying, like, you chose not to become a Navy SEAL. That was your choice. Don't.
I did choose that.
Exactly. You chose not to be a Navy SEAL.
Right. If you listen to 012, I chose to work at Guitar Center instead.
Dude, rock and roll. Let's go, baby. And so, like, it's your choice. Don't use your choices as a crutch.
Right.
Don't compare your livelihood or your skill sets or your abilities to somebody else's. Like, do that assessment of yourself and recognize, like, okay, you're in this position because of your choices. And I'm not saying that in a bad or positive way.
Right. It's a neutral statement.
This is a neutral statement.
Yeah.
And, hey, if this frustrates you, well, then cool. I'm speaking to you in a loving manner in regards to, hey, let's do something about it. Yeah. You can make excuses or you can make things happen. You cannot do both. And we've said that multiple times over multiple episodes.
That needs to be on a mug or a T-shirt.
Oh, we're working on that, right?
That'll be wonderful.
Yes.
And we're going to have good right-handed mugs so that you can see what's on it.
Yeah, there we go. And so that's something, though, that you can actually to work on to improve. And you can have the conversation with your kids and you can sit down and say, hey, when these things happen, you put me in a bad situation to where, you can still have the exact same conversation with your kids. And, if they don't respect you or think you're capable, then change it, right? Or do something as a family and say, hey, we're going to start training as a family so that we are capable. And hey, we're going to be healthy. We're going to be strong. We're going to be capable because that's actually what's required of us from in society. And this is what our family, if that becomes part of your core beliefs and your values as a family, guess what? Your kids are going to respect it. Because they're going to be there training with you. And, Jason Kleepa, he's a great example of this. Jocko is a great example of this. Leif is a great example of this. Cody Gandy, Game Day Gandy, is a great example of this. Yeah. Because when you follow Cody on social media, he is constantly doing things with his family. He's working out with his wife. And guess what his kids are doing while they're working out? They're working out.
Yeah, they're hanging out with him.
They're hanging out with him. My buddy Derek Wida, he sets a great example to his kids of working out. And, my buddy Sal Frisella is a great example. Pete Roberts, great example. Like, there's so many people out there that are great examples of this. There's no reason why you can't be. There's zero reason why you can't be. Now, I know there's also a lot of other people that are great examples of this that don't post about it on social media.
Right.
Like I know Danny Ziem doesn't post anything about his family because he's always like, you guys are crazy to Cody and I for posting our family stuff. And we're like, bro, that's the way we want to live our life and set the example to other people. And that's what we want to do. Like Danny has a different view of that and that's fine. That's awesome. Like Danny's a little more reserved and quiet about his family stuff, but he's still setting a good example to his kids and of training. And, he does jiu-jitsu with his kids.
Yeah.
His kids do jiu-jitsu. They work out. His kids see him working out. You know what I mean? And so it's an example that you can set if you want to.
Yeah.
It's your choice. Nobody else dictates this. Nobody else dictates the example that you set for your kids. I mean, I think I've done a good job honoring my mom and dad when I talk about how the example that they set from the moment we were born until we're young adults of working hard, having integrity, having a good work ethic, having discipline, having a good attitude, the importance of loving God and the importance of living a good life and being a good Christian example. Like those are all things that my parents showed us. They didn't just talk about it. They showed them to us.
Yeah.
And same with my aunts and uncles, like my Aunt CJ and Uncle Eric and my Aunt Connie and Aunt Jerlee and Uncle Mike's, like all my aunts and uncles were great examples of this. Great examples. Like my Aunt CJ was really big in our life when we were growing up. You know, it's my mom's younger sister. She was in the Air Force. She, an amazing, medic and flight nurse, and did some incredible things, helped, a lot of wounded service members, that were injured overseas on their flights, taking care of them. And, she was always present in our life growing up. And, you think about it, like she was our aunt, but she still had influence over us like a parent would, because she chose to be present in our lives. She chose to, take us hiking and take us camping and teach us how to be sufficient and the importance of staying hydrated and working out and doing all these things, like she showed us all these things.
Yeah.
It was her choice. She didn't have to. She's our aunt. You know what I mean? Like technically you could be like, well, that's not my kids, not my responsibility.
Right.
But I like when people say that, it blows me away. Cause I'm like, I never saw that from any of my aunts or uncles. My grandparents were heavily involved in us growing up, Like when each and one of my grandparents passed away, I have one grandmother alive and that's it. The rest are all passed away. Every single one of them was very difficult. And because they were a big portion of our life. And, again, my aunts and uncles, they chose to be in our lives. And for you as a parent, it's your choice at what level you want to be engaged with your kids. And man, I'll go back to Cody. He is a phenomenal example of that.
Yeah.
On and off of social media. The social media is not a game. That's his life.
Yeah.
That's how him and Paige operate as parents. I might be wrong, but I can tell you that I've never heard of it happening, and I've never seen Cody yell at his kids. Ever.
I don't know that I can say that. My kid's 15 months old.
I know I can't.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now I cannot, which is unfortunate. I mean, it's pretty impressive if you think about that.
Yeah, no doubt. Especially when he's got 4 of them, right? That are that close together.
Bro.
Like that's wild. You're talking about like the instilling those things in your family. There are a couple of recent videos that Instagram posts that Jocko made where it's him and his daughter and they're
training Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, training Jiu-Jitsu together.
Come on now.
It looks, and there is a genuine joy and enjoyment on both of their faces. Like it's not this, like you can, so we've got a friend who does, she coaches pageants.
Okay.
So, like she coaches pageant competitors. And
wow.
I've gotten to be in some of the like mock interviews for that. And she's trained those of us who help with the mock interviews because she's coaching like the Miss Americas and Miss USAs. She's coached a couple of winners.
What?
Yeah, she's amazing. And she's like, if they start doing this, they're giving you a fake answer. So hammer them. She's like, you can tell when somebody's being disingenuous. And yeah, and when we've seen it from some of her pageant competitors we've done mock interviews for. And some of the pageant parents that are like, oh yeah, no, we're so happy to be here. And it's like, no, you're not. You're faking this because like your daughter wants to be here. You want your daughter there, or whatever. You can tell that, when him and his daughter are doing those videos together, that's exactly like they're having a blast. That's what they want to be doing.
Yeah.
Is doing that. And with Cody and his videos with his kids, like it's the same thing. Like they are loving what they're getting to do and being together. And that only happens when we invest in those relationships in a very intentional way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Cody's a good example and a reminder to me of like, I just need to be more intentional with my marriage and with my kids. Like, I mean, I obviously love Amanda and I love my kids, but I recognize I need to do a better job being present, you know, and also showing them like through my actions. So it's just something that I know it's something I need to work on. So
yeah, and it's a lifelong endeavor, like all of this stuff is.
Yes,
right. Which
absolutely.
is why we can't get complacent with it.
You have to go to war with that complacency every day, man.
Amen, brother.
Any final thoughts or questions or anything before we close it out?
My final thoughts are just about they're introspective, right?
Okay.
Like the things that I need to do. When you're You're talking about, am I in good enough shape? Am I capable enough? And all of those things. And I think in the intensity of the situation that you were in, like obviously that applies in a, can I defend my family thing? But I think that question set is applicable across the board, right? Like I'm 38 and I've got a 15-month-old kid. I've got one on the way. Lord willing, Kirsten and I'll still have another couple. I'm going to be the old dad. Like there's no two ways about it, right?
Okay.
If I'm 40 when our last one is born, right, then at their graduation, I'm 58 years old.
Yeah.
Right? At my graduation, my dad had not yet turned to 40. Right? So
same here.
Right? So like I'm going to be the old dad. In a lot of those groups, and that's fine.
That's fine.
Yeah, like, and I was looking at my dad, and I had this conversation about it because we were talking. And I was like, yeah, there's parts of this where I'm like, man, it would be so much better if I was younger, like you were, when I'd feel capable of doing all of these kinds of things. And he was like, yeah, so would you have wanted to have your kids with anybody else? I was like, no. I think about the girls I dated in my 20s, and I was like, those aren't the ones I would necessarily want to be raising kids with.
Yeah, exactly.
But all that said, like it's up to me to be healthy.
Yeah.
It's up to me to make sure that I'm doing the things that are necessary so that even if I am, 10, 15 years older than every other dad that's there, that I'm still able to enjoy kicking the ball with the kids or, rolling with them and practicing wrestling and jiu-jitsu and all of those things. Like, am I good enough? Am I capable enough? Am I, strong enough? Am I in good enough shape? And all those things. Those are things that apply in not just this one fast of can I protect my family, but also like, am I able to be intentional enough with my kids and the things that they want to do and that they want to pursue? Yeah. Then, well, I have to answer those same questions, right? Whether those pursuits for my kids are athletic, whether they're intellectual, whether they're musical, it's up to me to be in good enough shape to know about what they're wanting to do in their areas of interest and all those kinds of things. So I think that question set is applicable in a lot of different areas. And so as you're, my final thoughts is like, what areas of your life can you apply that same question set to, right? Like maybe you feel like, you know what, I'm good to go when it comes to defending my family, right? Like I'm okay with that. But what I need to do is I need to ask myself, like, how can I be better when it comes to reading with my kid or doing what's the big buzzwords in the psychology world right now, and the pediatric psychology is a child-led play, right? So like when your kid comes and brings you a block and just wants to hand the block back and forth, it's boring. It's terrible, but he loves it. Yep. So like, can I be better about just being engaged and passing the block back and forth with my kid because that's where he's at? Can I be in better shape? Can I be more aware of like what my kids' goals and pursuits are in all of these other areas? What's one of these other questions you asked there? Can I teach my kids more? Can I be more present? Can I train more? And all of those questions are ones that can be applied to every facet of parenthood when it comes to our kids. And so that's like my takeaway from this is like, how am I applying those things to where my kid's at right now? Yeah. Knowing that in at the rate that, my kid is at with development's happening so quickly, like in 6 months, that's going to change. Yeah. And in 6 years, it's going to be way different. And in, when he's at Aiden's age, in 16 years, I'm not going to be able to recognize where he's at now to where he's at then. But if I don't keep asking myself these questions, like, we're not going to have a relationship for me to be able to even speak into that. So yeah, those questions, those things that I need to be better. I need to be in better shape. I need to be more aware, teach my kids more, to be more present, train more. That applies to every facet of life. Yes. So, yeah.
Yeah, I a good example of that also is one of the guys that works with us at Echelon Front, one of my really good close buddies from the SEAL teams, Carlos Mendez. Yeah. And that's one of the things that he has done with his son, Matthew. And he's taught him about taxes. He's taught him about investments. He's taught him, all these things.
Taught him about taxes gives me a headache.
Yeah. But it's crazy is this kid is in high school and he literally, he legally can't because he's not 18, but he has these mock trading accounts set up that Carlos set up for him for he could practice these things. and he literally could transfer money over right now and be making money in the markets. He understands the markets. He knows the markets. He knows finance. He knows taxes. All these things. So he understands like debt and credit and all these things that you don't understand because nobody really teaches us until you get, and maybe you might have a parent that'd be like, maybe you shouldn't max out your credit card. And they're like, that's the most advice you get from them.
Right.
And I mean, he is fully educated on all these things for the ability to be very educated when it comes to like the finance side of life and all the and he has him doing jiu-jitsu and has him wrestling now, and he's like doing all these things that's just only going to make him a better human.
I was gonna say, what a well-rounded kid. And if you have the chance, so there's a Mustard 018 is in January.
Yeah.
Is that so? And Carlos spoke at 017 that was here in Dallas in October.
Yep.
And was phenomenal. Yeah. So if you want to meet some of the folks that JP's talking about, get on it for 018. And then what do you got? 19 is Nashville, and then number 20.
Yeah, we'll be back here
in XX in Dallas, and tickets
Dallas.
for all those are on sale.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I'm looking up real quick the numbers.
Because you got back end information that the rest of us plebes don't have.
There's only literally a handful of tickets left for San Diego.
All right, we'll get them.
Yep. If you go to echelonfront.com, click on events, go to the muster, click on the tab, you get that information. But all right, man, this is good.
Yeah, and it is muster, not mustard.
Yeah, muster, M-U-S-T-E-R.
Yeah, just for those of you who are confused about that, who are out there in the internet world.
Searching condiments.
I would like to go to Jocko Mustard 018. Maybe what I've really done is I've invented his next product. It's going to be Jocko Mustard. It's going to be keto friendly and have like 5 or 6 grams of protein per tablespoon.
I was just saying, I thought all mustard was
Mustard
keto.
Is already keto friendly.
Like,
I'm making this really easy on him by designing a product for him that already fits into all the categories he needs.
Jocko Air. Yeah. Just breathe it.
Also, I would like to say, like on this note, so Kirsten's been reading Extreme Ownership, nice. And she got through the preface, she got through the intro, and we were looking at some of the stuff online, and he posted the picture of like it was one of the ones that's like 4:34 is when he's getting up, and the picture was just posted. We were up at 6:34, and she's like, "Hey, look, we get up at the same time as Jocko."
Different time zones, but it's all the same.
She was like, "It's the same time."
Yeah,
it's the same time. So.
I like when people are like on the East Coast, are like up before Jocko, and you're like, okay, yeah.
And I love, that was her contribution so far.
Dude, I love it. Let's go.
Yep.
Well, as always, thank each and every one of you guys for supporting us by listening, sharing, subscribing, and commenting. It makes a big difference, especially when you guys are doing that on YouTube, so we appreciate that. If you want to follow us on social media, I am at JP Dinnell. That's at JPDINNELL. And Lucas is at LUCASPINCKARD. Make sure you guys are also following Echelon Front on Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter,
X,
Facebook. Oh yeah, it's not Twitter, it's X.
Yeah, it's X.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, their Facebook stuff is a good follow.
Yeah, they've got really good info out there. So it's just at echelonfront.com is our website as well. So that's ECHELONFRONT. If you want to learn more about what we do, you want to learn about the muster or the different events, the field training exercises, the council, the battlefield reviews, having one of our instructors come and work with your team, you can go to echelonfront.com. Love to see you guys at a future event, be able to meet you guys or have one of our instructors come work with your team. If you want, you can also check out at Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu _USA. It's a ministry I'm a part of with Isaac Tauefa, Stephen Little, and Josh Strasburger. We also have a podcast called the Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. Our goal is to try to do live Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu events every month. Every other month is kind of where we're hitting right now at different gyms. It's a free jiu-jitsu seminar led by a black belt, local expert in that area. Then we share a testimony, and then we close it out with open mat, so people have a lot of opportunities to learn jiu-jitsu, have some fellowship, and get some good training in. We also provide Bibles for that if people need Bibles or specific prayer. It's a great opportunity for us to be able to get together. I'm also a partner of a Texas beef company called Little Cattle Co.
Get that beef.
Get that beef, dog. Our website is littlecattle.co. It's just our name as a website. You can also follow us on Instagram at littlecattle.co. My best friend Stephen Little started it back in 2017. And my wife and I partnered up with them this year as well with our friends Tyler Little and his wife Ashton. So the six of us are building that business. Primarily, it is Stephen and his wife Amanda Little that are growing that company, doing an awesome job. We can deliver beef anywhere in the lower 48, and we also have been sending boxes of beef to your customers and clients. We just want to thank you the amount of support that we've been having from people reaching out and saying, hey, I want to send boxes of beef to my customers, to my family members, to my friends as a thank you. They've been doing it for the holidays, and then also as the year closes out and as the year is getting ready to start next year, people are already planning on sending boxes of beef, Texas beef, to their customers to start the year off. So it's something that we're able to do for you guys. We appreciate all that support. It's been an absolute blessing as we're growing this company. So I just want to thank you guys for that. Also, I'm a partner with one of my other best friends, Josh Strasburger. We started a printing company called On the Path Printing. We are on Instagram at On the Path Printing. So send us a message there. Let us know how we can help you out with your company, ministry, foundation, printing needs. That was the intent that when we started On the Path Printing is so that we can pick the companies that we want to work with. We want to help ministries. We want to help organizations. We want to help foundations and businesses get good quality apparel printing here. We're also going to partner up with Origin USA and have the ability to print on those Origin blanks, so everything will be 100% American made. As we close it out, I just want to remind you guys that we also have the Def Reset. If you go to defreset.com, you have some information on that to get started. We're going to start that officially on January 1st. A handful of us have actually already started it because we don't need to wait until January to get going when it comes to getting ourselves in the shape that we need and get ourselves mentally in the shape that we need and spiritually in the shape that we need. It starts right now. So as we close it out, I want to remind you that it is up to you, 100% up to you, to be capable to protect and also to be capable to provide for yourself, for your family, for your friends, and for those around you. Now, this is not to scare you. We are not to live in fear. Fear is of the devil. We know that. But we need to be able to live in peace because we know we are prepared to do whatever is needed. And when we have that, we're able to fully trust God in all these things. You have to change your mindset. You have to put in the extra work. You get to put in the extra work. So go out there and get one more rep in whatever is going to make you a better human. This has been the JP Dinnell Podcast, episode 13.